In this practical phase, we are going to create a three-dimensional illustration. We are going to use architecture as the inspiration to create a dreamy world. We are going to use the tools that we learned during this course, so the perspective grid tool, the blend tool, and the 3D effects. Let's have a look. Let's get started by creating a new file, and then I'm going to go for web 1500 by 1500, so it's going to be a square nice canvas, RGB colors, and create. Firstly, I'm going to save my file, so save and call it Practical Phase. And let's get started. This time, instead of using a sketch, we're going to go ahead and create straight away on the computer. I'm going to start with my perspective grid tool by creating an abstract architectural building. I'm going to go ahead and draw one side of the building, let's say somewhere there, and let's work with just a fill, no stroke. I'm going to use random shades at the moment just as indicators, selecting the next side that I want to draw at. And you see how the snap tool perfectly snaps in the different sides so they match. I want to see also a bit of the inside of the building, so I'm going to go farther down my grid. I'm going to change a bit the shade. Everything is really random in terms of coloring. I don't bother at the moment to create anything precise. I'm going to create a full cup here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a bit of the thickness on the different walls. So let's grab a darker shade, let's say. And I'm drawing on the wrong side. I need the bottom one in order to create a thickness for this wall here. And I want another thickness for that wall there. If you don't manage to perfectly match all the shapes at the moment, don't worry, you can always go ahead and manually adjust them later on. The perspective grid tool is really handy to give you kind of help to make your perspective look right. Let's add a bit of a floor as well. So step by step, creating shapes on the different sides allow you to create a three-dimensional space. And let's add again a bit of a thickness on this side. Changing the shade, it doesn't matter for me the color at the moment, it is all a matter of shapes and getting the perspective right. So I'm gonna add the door on this building somewhere like here. And let's add a little window as well. I'm gonna do a round window, so enough with the squares we need to have something a bit more round too. And I'm gonna make these corners a bit round too. Perhaps this side needs to be less round due to the perspective. Yeah, that feels a bit more right. Let's add some steps as well here. The door is gonna stay a bit farther up, and we are gonna create two little steps to come out of the door. I'm changing again the shade so we can clearly see that. And the other side of the step. It needs a bit of practice, but you're gonna get really quickly to learn how to select the sides and how to quickly draw the shapes that you need. That feels quite good. Another thing that we could add are like some little tiles that they're coming towards the house. It could be something as simple as a rectangle tile here. And I'm gonna add another one for the path too. I'm gonna actually use those lines as my guide so I can have the right steps. And again, I'm gonna add a bit of thickness on both of them. In order to get rid of the perspective grid tool and clearly see what we created, I'm just gonna switch to the tool and press the X here on this indicator. I'm gonna go ahead and open one of the palettes that I saved. So I'm gonna grab the swatches panel, go to library, go to the user defined, and I'm gonna use the candy colors. I'm gonna grab the folder and drag it to the swatches. I was thinking of using this nice and cream colors that I created. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply them to the different shapes. So something like darker on this side, the windows even darker, let's say. The step as well, let's use similar tones, the top of the step, something in the middle, and then the side I'm gonna make it nice and bright. Something feels quite wrong here in terms of the step and where it starts, but we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna fix it in a bit. Let's try the white. Gives a nice contrast. Top, it's gonna be the same with the main plate, and then the side I'm gonna do it like a bit of a darker one, and that side something in the middle. So I'm just using the eyedropper to quickly recolor my composition. Nice, that feels already a bit better. Let's go ahead now and fix some issues here. Firstly, they don't perfectly match, so I had to be a bit more accurate when I was using my perspective grid tool, but that's okay, I can still fix it manually with my wide arrow. I'm selecting the different points and I'm perfectly aligning them to the objects that this should be aligned to. This should be somehow like this. We don't mind here at the back since they have the same color, and here again I need to align that somewhere there. And let's have a closer look to see if there is anything else that it doesn't properly align, like here. Grabbing them, moving them a bit farther out so you can have perfect control again to bring them back using the snap option and the smart guides. That feels good. That is right, all good here. Let's have a look on this side. Here as well on the step, they're not nicely aligning yet. It just takes a bit of time to get them done, but it's nice to have them tidy so if anyone ever zooms in your illustration can clearly see what you created. Let's move it a bit farther down so it matches the corner of the building with the floor. And the steps perhaps need to come a bit farther this way. Okay, so the building I think feels quite good. I don't see any other details. So let's work on those steps to make sure also they are nicely aligned. Almost there, just the last side to adjust it using the white arrow still. Building is almost done. What I'm gonna go ahead and do now is add some tiny details here and there. So I need a bit of depth on those windows. So I'm gonna duplicate the shape here. I'm gonna color this one a bit brighter. I'm gonna duplicate also the back shape and paste it in place so you see it's double. I'm gonna select those two and go ahead and use the pathfinder. What I want is just the shape that they have in common between, and that is gonna create a bit of a depth on my window, which doesn't feel as great, so I probably need to move that a bit farther up to have the right perspective. Let's try again. Yes, that feels a bit nicer. And I'm gonna do the same here with the door. So I'm gonna move it farther that way. I'm gonna recolor that part a bit brighter. so I can see that. And I think somewhere there, yeah, that would work. Duplicate this shape and select both to keep the area that they have in common. And that gave a bit of a depth as well to my door. I'm gonna create an additional shape here, which is this first kind of step, if we call it this way, when you're coming in the door. There are details that make the difference. Just somewhere there would be the perspective. We need a tiny different shade, so what I'm gonna perhaps do is create an additional shade, or let me see if we can use one of the palettes. Okay, this one could work as well. I'm gonna adjust also a bit the curve here. I'm not really sure about the shade that it currently has. And I'm gonna add an anchor point there and grab this one to add some handles and make it a bit more curvy. Perhaps I'm gonna do this one darker and add on this one the brighter tone. Great, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the background color. I'm gonna cut this background, add it on a new layer. I'm gonna call it background. Bring it at the back, lock it, call this graphics. I'm gonna work in all of the graphics on one layer. Perhaps it feels a bit too orange, this background. Do we have anything else a bit more yellowish at the palette, perhaps? Let's have a look. Not really on this palette, but yeah, I like something like this. From a different palette, but it doesn't really matter.